God bless you, everyone. Thank you for being here. Now we will talk about some topic that is important for us, and the topic is the purpose of our camp and the Holy Convocation. This is related that we are doing us in this time to spread the word or be in the service of God. So for that reason, we will talk about this in this time. So let me start reading three verses. Let me start by reading Bible verses to that will help to understand what a camp is. So first one is Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 24. This said, and I also heard the sound of their wings, like the sound of abundant waters as they went, like the voice of the, the Almighty. A sound of a crowd, like the sound of an army camp. Whenever they stopped, they let down their wings. The Lord utters his voice before his army. His camp is indeed very great, for mighty is one who carries out his word. The day of the Lord is indeed great and very awesome, and who can endure it? Okay. Okay. Now it said Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse um, 14. Okay. Since the Lord your God walked in the midst of your camp to save you and to defeat your enemies before you. Your camp must be holy, so he must not sing anything indecent among you, or he will turn away from you. So these three verses are very important, and also we will talk about these three verses with relation with the camp. And also to talk about this, um, okay, as we just read in Scripture, the camp is not just a word, but a biblical concept. Okay, and it is different from the concept of church, although they have similarities such as being a group of people, having an order and purpose, but they have different functions and other characteristics. The Hebrew word for camp is Machăneh, which would be a camp of travelers or troops, and literally an army of soldiers. This is very important. Okay, from the Exodus from Egypt, from the Exodus of Egypt to Canaan, Israel is called a camp. When they settle in Canaan, the army begins to be called a camp. So there are two understandings of this: travelers and troops. This is very important because it's in the literality of the word Machăneh. Okay, now figuratively, a camp can be mentioned as an army or a group of dancers, angels, or stars, among others. If we take an example, we can see, for example, in Genesis chapter 32, verse 1, the angels of God meet Jacob, and upon seeing them, Jacob says they are a camp of God, and he called the place Mahanaim because it is the union of two camps that is in the celestial and the earthly, because there are a camp of God and also the camp of Jacob. For that reason, is a Mahanaim because they are together in a union. For that reason, the word Mahanaim. Now, in Greek, the word for camp is parembole, which has been translated as army, castle, and camp. In the book of Acts, the word is translated as castle or barracks in other version. For example, the New American Standard Bible. Sorry. Now, the word congregation or church in Hebrew is the word kahal, and in Greek it is the word ecclesia, and its emphasis is on the convocation or calling to the people to gather. Using a modern example related to we are talking about the camp and the church, we have this example. We have a president of a nation who deals with the people and with the army, although both are groups. They have different ways of life, objectives, and also functions. And the dealing the president will have with both groups will be different. Okay, so regarding to Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 24, Joel, chapter 2, verse 11, and Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 14, we can see certain characteristics of God for the camp. So, first one, He has given it power according to Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 24, and Joel chapter 2, verse 11. So we will read it again to understand this. So Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 24. And I also heard the sound of their wings like the sound of abundant waters as they went like the voice of the Almighty. A sound of a crowd like the sound of an army camp. Whenever they stop, they let down their wings. So here is talking about power because it's related to the voice of the Almighty. So the voice the Almighty is with power. So he's a relationship between the sound of an army camp. So this is a relation of power. Also, is be more clear in Joel chapter 2, verse 11. It said, the Lord uttered his voice before his army. His camp is indeed very great, for mighty is one who carries out his word. So he is a relation between the camp with the power and with the voice of the Lord, or some things here. Okay. Now, second thing is God is giving to the camp the instruction and growth. He is related also with Joel chapter 2, verse 11, because he said, the Lord uttered his voice before his army. So there is here is the instruction of the Lord to the camp. Okay, now said, his camp is indeed very great. Almighty is one who carries out his word. So also he is talking about the growth in the spirit for the camp, and not only in numbers but also in glory. So for that reason we're talking about the growth, not only for for the spiritual things and also for the numbers of the people in the camp. So, okay. Now we also will the second point is company and consecration. Why? Because he said in Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 14 said, since the Lord your God walks in the midst of your camp to save you and defeat your enemy before you. So here he's talking about the company that God will have with the camp. Now, in the second part, said, your camp must be holy. So he must not see anything indecent among you, or he will turn away from you. So here talking about two things: company that God will have with the camp, but also the consecration and the holiness that God needs from this camp. So this is very important. Uh, so we now said we will say an example related to understand more about this, and we can set an example that we could mention for this would be Gideon. For example, as it was an army of 300 people with a specific mission. They were a camp within the people of Israel. So Gideon, when Jesus called Gideon, they take, for example, in the first call was 22,000 people in the calling to the army. But when God talked with Gideon, they say that there are too many people for that kind of mission. If they apply some salvation with this kind of army of 22,000 people, the people think or thought that for uh, his own power, they apply the deliverance to Israel. So for that reason, God only take 300 people to apply this mission, to apply some deliverance to the people of God or the people of Israel. So this is very important because we see the distinction of these two things: the camp and the people, or the church and the camp. How the camp help to the church or to the people of God. But also the camp need to be organized, and every member of the camp have a role among the camp. Everyone needed in this camp. So this is different from the church. And also we will read the word church. Okay. So let me find it. I think. Okay. So let me explain now about the church because I forget it. So said now for the word for congregation or church in Hebrew is the word kahal, and in Greek is the word ecclesia, and it is emphasis on the convocation or calling to the people together. So there is different purposes, and also the church have some order and also have some people. For example, the elders, for example, the deacons, the pastor, and everything. He has his own structure, but is different from the camp because the camp is more militarily and not only for edification to the people, because the camp have some style of life very different from the church or the people in the church, uh, because we have different necessities and different functions. Okay, if we have this clear in this moment, we can go here to read some other things. So let me, okay. So as a camp, we have been given an instruction which is to gather to celebrate God and receive his word, which we call a Holy Convocation. So we have different instruction in this camp that God given us to us, but one of them is to have this meeting that is called Holy Convocation. And also I will explain the purpose of this Holy Convocation. Okay. We believe this was given to us from Leviticus chapter 23, verse 33 to verse 36, and also the verse 43, which we are going to read. Okay, so let me start with reading this. Okay, So again, Leviticus 23, verse 33 to 36. Again, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, saying, on the on the 50th of this seventh month is the feast of booths for 7 days to the Lord. On the first day is a holy convocation. You shall not do any laborer's work. For 7 days you shall present an offering by fire to the Lord. On the 8th day you shall have a holy convocation and present an offering by fire to the Lord. It is an assembly. You shall not do any laborer's work. So that your generation, in the 20, the next verse said, so that your generations may know that I have the sons of Israel live in boats when I brought them out of from the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Okay, so related to this that we are talking about, there are some things that we need to set or explain in better ways. So from what we have just read, we see 4 things. Feast of Booths of Tabernacles. 2, Holy Convocation. 3, the 8th date. And finally, the Solemn Assembly. For the reason we see it here, the Feast of Booths or the Tabernacles. Here, the second thing is the Holy Convocation. Okay, everything is here. The Holy Convocation in the 8th day and the assembly, or in other versions said, Solemn Assembly. Okay, so there are 4 things that are very important. So on the 8th, of the Feast of Booths was celebrated to remember that God was with the people of Israel in the desert, and that the tabernacles or tents are part of their life as a camp. On the 8th day, a holy convocation was held as a solemn assembly with the purpose of closing the feast and celebrating that God had been with them. In our case, today, on this our 8th day in a prophetic way, we have this holy convocation in solemn assembly to remember that God has been with us as a camp. For this reason, today we gather a solemn assembly to celebrate and receive the word of God. So, for that reason, that is the purpose of this camp in this understanding. In this case, we help to the church, or we help to some other ministries, or we help other people as a camp to they can improve in different ways and different purposes of mission that God can give us to help to other people. That is the purpose of the camp. And also the Holy Convocation is to remember that God is with us, and he gave us this ministry of be a camp, and God is with us. So for that reason, we will celebrate and receive his word in this time of glory for the glory of Jesus Christ. So thank you for listening to us today in this time. And now we will start the praise and the worship.